Every morning, a Navy SEAL makes his bed. Not because it looks neat, but because it sets the tone for discipline, control, and success, no matter how brutal the day ahead is. Admiral William H. McRaven, a retired 4-star admiral and former Navy SEAL, believes that success in life doesn't come from grand gestures. It starts with something as simple and powerful as making your bed. In his best-selling book Make Your Bed, McRaven reveals 10 life lessons he learned from Navy SEAL training that can help anyone overcome challenges, build resilience, and lead a better life, no matter who you are or where you come from. In this gripping journey through trials, discipline, and triumph, you'll discover that life is less about what happens to you and more about how you respond. Welcome to Shiny Books, where we don't just read, we transform. Let's unfold the wisdom that begins with your bedsheet. You wake up. The alarm buzzes. Maybe it's still dark outside and maybe your body is begging for just 5 more minutes. But instead of hitting snooze, you throw the blanket aside, sit up, and, without overthinking, you make your bed. Corners tucked. Pillows straightened. Just like that, you've completed your first task of the day. And no, this isn't about being tidy. This is about taking control. Admiral McRaven's first lesson sounds almost laughably simple. Make your bed. But within that act lies a seed of structure. In Navy SEAL training, recruits are taught to make their beds with meticulous precision. The sheets had to be pulled tight. The pillow centered. The blanket folded just so. Why such obsession over something so small? Because when everything else feels like chaos, your body's broken, your mind's screaming, and the world's on fire, that one small, perfect thing reminds you, you still have control. That one act says, I'm not done. And so your day begins with order, not randomness. It builds momentum. One task down leads to another. Over time, it becomes identity. You become someone who finishes what you start. Think about this in your life. You say you'll start that workout routine, that book, that project. But then the day derails, motivation fades, and nothing changes. That's where small wins, like making your bed, sneak in like secret weapons. Because habits are the backbone of achievement. They're not always flashy, but they build you brick by brick. McRaven insists that making your bed is symbolic. If you can't do the little things right, how will you ever do the big things? It's not about cleaning. It's about discipline. About pride in your work. About showing up for yourself. In training, many SEAL candidates quit. They ring the bell and walk away. But those who stay often aren't the strongest or fastest. They're the ones who show up every single day, who master the basics and do the work even when no one's watching. Making your bed each morning becomes a promise to yourself. No matter what happens today, I showed up. Maybe no one sees it. Maybe no one applauds it. But when you return to that room at night, no matter how brutal the day, your bed is made. That's victory. That's self-respect. That's consistency. McRaven also reminds us, life is unpredictable. Sometimes you'll be flat on your back, out of options, out of strength. But if you've trained yourself to do the hard thing first, even something as small as straightening your bedsheet, then you've already begun shaping your resilience. You're telling your mind, I lead here. Not circumstances. Not emotions. Me. You don't need to join the Navy to adopt this mindset. Start with your morning. When your eyes open, resist the pull to scroll, to drift, to delay. Instead, move your body and make your space orderly. That's not housekeeping. That's mindset work. The magic here is subtle. You begin to crave more discipline. You start finishing other small tasks. You drink more water. You reply to that email. You don't let dishes pile up. You follow through. Not because you suddenly got more motivated, but because you tapped into something deeper, the power of routine. And if you miss a day, no guilt. Just return the next morning. That's the point, showing up again and again. Somewhere in the background of every high performer is a stack of invisible habits just like this. Quiet, humble, repetitive. They don't make headlines, but they change lives. Your life. So tomorrow morning, as the world wakes up noisy, uncertain, and chaotic, take a moment. Breathe. Ground yourself. And make your bed. It might just be the first step toward becoming who you were always meant to be. Your muscles are burning. Your lungs feel like fire. The ocean is freezing. And you've been crawling through wet sand for hours under the command of a trainer who's not letting up anytime soon. You want to stop. Every cell in your body screams for it. But you keep going. What? Because in SEAL training, pain isn't the enemy. It's the instructor. Admiral McRaven's second lesson is brutally honest. Life is tough and it's going to hurt. But if you want to build anything meaningful, success, character, strength, you have to be willing to suffer. Not blindly, not recklessly, but with purpose. Think of your own life. When something feels uncomfortable, a tough conversation, an early morning, a difficult decision. What's your first instinct? Escape? Delay? Most people run from discomfort. But McRaven learned that the only way to grow is to move toward it, to sit with the pain, to learn from it. In SEAL training, there's an infamous event called surf torture. Recruits are ordered to march into the freezing Pacific and sit shoulder to shoulder in the pounding surf, just cold enough to induce hypothermia. The goal? See who breaks. But here's what's wild. The ones who make it through aren't necessarily the strongest. They're the ones who embrace the suffering, who accept that pain is part of the process. You start to realize, pain teaches. It teaches patience, humility, focus. It strips away your ego and reveals who you really are. In those cold, miserable waters, surrounded by waves and noise and doubt, you meet yourself, raw and unfiltered. And here's the real insight: pain isn't the punishment. It's the path. If you can sit with it, breathe through it, and not flinch, then you're training your mind for the real world, for heartbreak, failure, rejection, loss. The stuff no one escapes. McRaven shares another brutal SEAL tradition, the sugar cookie. No, it's not a snack. It's punishment. If your uniform isn't perfect or your gear isn't aligned, you're ordered to dive into the surf and then roll around on the sand until every inch of you is covered, from hair to boots. You spend the whole day wet and gritty. Why? Because life's not fair. Sometimes you do everything right and still get punished. The sugar cookie is a lesson in accepting injustice without complaint. And isn't that a perfect metaphor for life? You show up on time, you do the work, you keep your promises, and still someone else gets the promotion, or the credit, or the break. That's your sugar cookie moment. And your response, not your rage, not your excuses, defines your strength. This is where McRaven's lessons hit hardest. They're not polished, Instagram-friendly inspiration. They're battle-tested truths. And they all circle back to one reality: pain is part of the contract. If you want to be great, in business, in relationships, in life, you've got to bleed a little. You've got to be willing to get uncomfortable on purpose. And you don't need a military drill instructor to find your version of surf torture. It's that moment when your alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and you want to stay in bed. It's when you sit down to write, and your mind fights you with every distraction. It's when you start a business and the world ignores you. What McRaven teaches is simple but revolutionary: lean in. Don't run. Don't numb it with distractions. Let the discomfort sharpen you. Let it forge you. Because the people who rise, truly rise, aren't the ones who avoid pain. They're the ones who master it. And there's a deeper reward too. Pain brings perspective. After crawling through cold mud and getting screamed at for hours, suddenly, a hot meal feels like a feast. A clean bed becomes a gift. The small moments shine brighter. Gratitude is amplified when it's born from struggle. So the next time you feel discomfort creeping in, whether it's fear, anxiety, failure, or just the ache of pushing yourself, don't tap out. Don't ring the bell. Pause. Breathe. And remember Admiral McRaven's words: pain is inevitable, but growth is optional. The choice is yours. You're standing in the middle of the ocean. It's pitch black. The only sound is the violent crash of waves, and the cold water rises up to your neck. Your arms are trembling, not from fear, but from exhaustion. And somewhere in that moment, when your legs can barely hold you and the darkness feels endless, a voice inside says, don't move. Stand your ground. Admiral McRaven calls this moment standing in the mud, a lesson in resilience under pressure. During Hell Week, the most brutal phase of Navy SEAL training, candidates are pushed beyond the limits of their body and mind. One night, they were ordered into a swamp, shoulder deep in thick, freezing mud. For hours, they stood there, shivering, starving, and exhausted. The instructors tempted them with warm food and blankets, saying, just ring the bell and it all ends. But someone, no one remembers who, started to sing. Just one voice. Then another joined in. Then another. And suddenly, 20 men stuck in the dark, frozen swamp, half broken, began to sing together. Not to entertain. Not to distract. But to survive. Because when everything collapses around you and you feel like giving up, the only thing left is your will and the people beside you. That's the third lesson. Stand tall in the dark water. Life will throw you into chaos. Into situations where nothing makes sense and everything hurts. But the choice to stay calm, to stay grounded, and to lead, even when you feel like you're sinking, that's what separates survivors from victims. In the real world, your swamp might be different. Maybe it's financial pressure, family turmoil, mental health battles, or losing someone you love. Maybe it's the creeping fear that you'll never make it, never be enough. When you're neck deep in uncertainty, when you can't see a way forward, the lesson is, don't flinch. Breathe. Anchor yourself. And above all, don't isolate. McRaven reminds us that no one gets through the mud alone. SEAL teams rely on one another with unshakable trust. When one man falls behind, the others pick him up. In business, in relationships, in dreams, you need people who will sing with you in the dark. And sometimes, leadership doesn't mean giving orders. It means showing up when no one else wants to. It means choosing integrity over comfort. In SEAL training, one of the exercises is log PT. Lifting a massive log as a team. It's heavy, awkward, and painful. The only way to succeed? Stay in sync. If one person stops pushing, the whole team feels it. That's life. Your actions ripple outward. Your calm in crisis becomes someone else's strength. Your song in the swamp might be the only thing keeping the team together. This isn't about being fearless. Even the strongest feel fear. McRaven himself admits that during some of his most dangerous missions, parachuting at night behind enemy lines, leading SEALs into combat, fear was there. But courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to act in spite of it. Picture the worst moment in your life. Maybe it's still unfolding. You're overwhelmed, uncertain, drowning. This section isn't here to give you false comfort. It's here to hand you a lifeline, a reminder that you're not broken because you're struggling. You're becoming. Right now in the mud. And when the world gets loud, when pressure mounts, when panic starts to rise, remember what McRaven learned. Sing. Metaphorically or literally. Use your voice. Find your center. Uplift others. Your calm in the chaos will not only carry you, it will inspire others to hold on. Maybe that's what leadership really is. Not authority, but presence. A steady hand in the storm. A song in the swamp. So when the next wave crashes over you, when your heart pounds and your hope wavers, you won't crumble. You'll stand tall, soaked, shivering, and singing. And you'll know, this is where strength is forged. You're standing in formation. The sun blazes overhead. Everyone looks the same. Same uniform, same shaved head, same boots polished to a mirror shine. Everyone moves in unison. Left, right, left. But then, one person steps slightly out of line. Not to show off. Not to rebel. But because doing the right thing demands it. And suddenly all eyes are on them. That's the fourth lesson McRaven drives home. Dare to be different even when you stand alone. In Navy SEAL training, blending in is often the safest option. If you mess up or stand out, punishment comes fast and hard. But McRaven learned that greatness doesn't come from conformity. It comes from conviction. From making decisions rooted in values, not popularity. He shares a powerful story of the Munchkin crew, a group of SEAL candidates who were shorter and smaller than the rest. Naturally, they were mocked. Other teams underestimated them. But they refused to be defined by their size. In fact, they pushed harder, swam faster, and worked smarter. Week after week, they outperformed the bigger, stronger groups. Because being different wasn't their weakness, it was their weapon. In your own life, how often have you shrunk yourself to fit in? Maybe you stayed silent in a meeting even though you had an idea. Maybe you followed the crowd when your heart wanted something else. Maybe you didn't apply for that opportunity because you felt not enough. But what if those very differences, your voice, your vision, your path, are what the world needs? McRaven's time in combat zones reinforced this lesson. When lives were on the line, the best leaders weren't always the most charismatic or loud. They were the ones who made tough calls, who challenged the norm, who did the right thing even when it wasn't popular. The world has a strange way of trying to standardize us, through culture, media, education. Be this, wear that. Don't speak too loud. Don't dream too big. But nothing meaningful was ever built by someone who just went with the flow. Think about history's changemakers. Mandela, Gandhi, Rosa Parks, Elon Musk, Greta Thunberg. At some point, each one stood alone. Not because they wanted to be different, but because they refused to abandon their truth. McRaven emphasizes that moral courage, the courage to stand up for what's right, is rarer than physical bravery. It means risking your reputation, your comfort, your place in the crowd. But it's also the path to impact. And it doesn't have to be dramatic. It could be speaking up when someone's being mistreated. It could be saying no when others are saying yes. It could be choosing your passion over a safer career. Or choosing peace over winning an argument. Being different isn't always about defiance. Sometimes it's quiet, steady, resolute. Like the soldier who prays in a corner while others laugh. Or the entrepreneur who chooses ethics over fast profit. Or the artist who creates from the heart instead of chasing trends. There's a moment in SEAL training called the circus. It's punishment for those who fail to meet physical standards. More push-ups, more running, more pain. But McRaven noticed something. Those who endured the circus came back stronger. fitter, mentally sharper, because they embraced their failure. When it turned it into fuel, they were different, and that made all the difference. You see, your flaws, your scars, your failures, they're not liabilities. They're signatures. They tell your story. The question is, will you own them or will you let the world shame them? Because the people who rise are those who stand, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's lonely, even when no one claps. McRaven ends this lesson with a quiet truth. If you want to change the world, start by standing apart. So the next time you feel the pressure to fit in, don't take the risk. Raise your hand. Speak the truth. Start the project. Wear the weird outfit. Say no when everyone's saying yes. Because different isn't dangerous. It's necessary. And someone somewhere is waiting to see someone like you, fully, unapologetically you, to realize that they too can stand tall alone. There's a brass bell that hangs in the center of the training compound. It gleams under the sun, polished, silent, heavy. Every Navy SEAL candidate sees it daily. And every candidate knows what it means. If you want out, if the pain becomes too much, if you're done, you ring the bell. That's it. Ring it 3 times and the suffering ends. No more freezing ocean. No more miles of sand. No more crawling through mud at midnight. But if you ring it, you quit. Admiral McRaven's final and most powerful lesson is this: never, ever ring the bell. Not because you're superhuman. Not because you're fearless. But because quitting becomes a habit. And when you surrender once, it gets easier the next time. And the time after that. Until eventually you stop trying, in work, in relationships, in life itself. The bell tempts everyone. Every SEAL candidate, no matter how tough, hears it calling at some point. When their body's screaming, when their mind is breaking, when nothing makes sense anymore, the bell becomes the promise of comfort. But comfort is a trap. That's what McRaven learned. You can walk away from discomfort, but you'll carry the weight of that bell forever. In your own life you have bells. They may not be made of brass, but they're real. The job that frustrates you. The business that's not growing. The gym sessions that leave you sore. The rejection emails. The failed relationships. The creative project no one notices. And each time you face difficulty, there's a little bell inside your mind that whispers, just stop. No one will blame you. It's too hard. But here's the thing, the moment you resist that voice, something happens. You shift. You build muscle. Not just in your body, but in your soul. That's the kind of strength McRaven's talking about. The strength to endure, to persist, to show up when the only thing pulling you forward is refusal to give up. There's a story McRaven tells about one of the SEAL candidates who kept failing the obstacle course. He wasn't the fastest or the most coordinated, but every time he failed, he tried again and again, until he finally passed, not because of natural talent, but because he simply refused to ring the bell. In the world of SEALs, this mindset is non-negotiable, because in combat, giving up isn't an option. Your team depends on you. Your mission depends on you. And most importantly, you depend on you. Now take that same mindset and apply it to everyday life. Think about the moments when success was just one try away, and you gave up. Maybe you stopped running at mile 2 when mile 3 was where the breakthrough would have come. Maybe you stopped posting your art just before someone big was about to notice. Maybe you ended a project just before it was about to take off. Most people give up too soon. Not because they're weak, but because they haven't trained their minds to push through discomfort. That's what this entire book is about, not military tactics, but mental warfare. The bell will always be there, in every chapter of your life. But so will the choice not to ring it. McRaven's advice isn't about toxic hustle or ignoring your limits. It's about resilience, about knowing the difference between rest and quitting. You can pause. You can regroup. But you don't surrender. And yes, there will be times when quitting seems like the only option. When no one believes in you. When the odds are against you. When the bell looks easier than the burden you're carrying. That's when you remember this lesson. You remember every time you got back up when life knocked you down. You remember the strength you didn't know you had. You remember the promise you made to yourself. I will not quit. Because here's the truth. The people who change the world, who build legacies, who write history, they all had bells. And they all chose not to ring them. So the next time you're in pain, emotional, physical, spiritual, don't look for the bell. Look inward. Find the tiny flame that refuses to go out. And let that guide you forward. You might crawl. You might stumble. You might move slow. But as long as you don't quit, you win. Because life doesn't reward the ones who had it easy. It rewards the ones who kept going. If this story moved you, if these lessons lit a fire in your chest, don't let them fade when the screen turns off. Tomorrow morning when you wake up, make your bed. Not just for neatness but as a declaration. A promise that you'll show up no matter what the world throws your way. Remember, small actions build a disciplined life. Embrace the hard days. Stand firm in the chaos. Don't be afraid to stand alone. And above all, never, ever ring that bell, because the moment you do, you surrender the greatness within you. Here at Shiny Books, we bring you not just summaries but the mindsets that build legends. If this message spoke to you, show some love. Like, share, and subscribe for more life-changing wisdom from the world's most powerful books. And drop a comment below. What bell have you refused to ring? Your story might just inspire someone else to keep going. This is Shiny Books signing off, where pages turn into power.